Hello and welcome to Underneath the Deaths, Ebola'S Hidden Costs, our program that looks at the impact of Ebola on social protection and livelihoods. In today's edition of the program, we will look at how border closure to stop the spread of the Ebola virus affected cross-border traders in the region. This program is part of the Wadr Oxfam project monitoring the Ebola response in West Africa. I'm Adolphus Maulo in Dakar. The Ebola outbreak in Liberia has come and gone, but tales about the virus remain.
We had the first wave of the outbreak between March and April. The first wave of the outbreak had only 6 confirmed cases with 6 confirmed deaths. So it's a 100% case fatality rate of the first wave. We dealt with the situation, curbed the first wave, and gone at least 60 days without a new case of the disease.
Then, the virus struck again, ripping Liberia apart and putting every activity in the country on hold, as Liberia's Deputy Minister of Health and head of the Incident Management System, Todbo Yensua, explains.
We had a second wave of the outbreak in May. That's the major and terrible part. Lofa County again became the epicenter close to the Guinean border. We have a number of cases out of the 15 counties. For the first time, capital city of Monrovia got hit with the disease. We had a case, a 14-year-old girl that traveled from Calawu in Sierra Leone and settled down with her family in Monrovia. Monrovia has 2/3 of the country's population, 1.5 million people, and people started getting infected from the disease. We had 3 counties got infection, has become the epicenter. By the time we got to July, Monrovia got infected in June. By June, July, August, we were reporting like 60 to 70 confirmed cases per day. In August, it was terrible, panic, fear, despair, frustration. The government had to put in place a system to deal with the situation.
The days that followed witnessed some of the worst devastation by the epidemic.
Number one, in August, September, the outbreak was very big. 100 confirmed cases per day. People dying in the streets. No treatment beds to put people. There was fear, desperation, and agitation in the community. And so we had to put in place a case management team that's responsible building Ebola treatment units. We put in place social mobilization with community engagement as another thematic area. We put in place laboratory system as another thematic area, epidemiology and surveillance with contact tracing as part of it, and then psychosocial support. So those thematic areas were set up, and what we did as the Commander-in-Chief, the President, under the mandate of the President, it was like, look, this is a Liberian problem. We facing the situation, we have to find solution for this. And so the intervention had to be led by Liberians, and so I'm in charge as the Commander-in-Chief of this country, and the incident manager with the thematic area was led by Liberians. So I chaired the incident management system. All of the thematic areas were chaired by Liberian, but what we did was, with our international partners, we incorporated them. And so each thematic area is chaired by a Liberian, but co-chaired by an organization like CDC will co-chair the epi-surveillance team, WHO will co-chair the case management team, social mobilization will be co-chaired by UNICEF, psychosocial support, logistics will be co-chaired by the World Food Program. And so we organize this national, multinational response to deal with the outbreak. But before we have all of this sophistication, the Liberian people themselves took charge of the disease, and then the social mobilization component, the community engagement component, and the ownership, people changed their behaviors over time. By September, we started seeing the curve bending. In August, this exponential projection that 1.4 million people were going to die if nothing was done. CDC came up with the report that 20,000 people, WHO said about 20,000 people will die on a weekly basis. So the Liberian people got the message and said, look, we have to change our behavior. So simple messages were thrown out there. Number one, the disease has no cure. The disease has no vaccine. The disease had a very high case fatality rate of close to 25 to 90%. And so, but it is preventable. So what you need to do is, if somebody is sick, make sure that you don't touch sick people. Make sure that you don't bury the dead. You call the health team. Ensure that you wash hands 24 hours with soap and water, chlorine. And so everywhere you went in Monrovia, or everywhere you go right now, there are hand washing corners to shops, to homes and marketplaces, supermarkets. Everywhere there's hand washing corners, people washing their hands, no touching of their bodies. So the behavior change alone play a very, very critical role in combination with the huge, huge international support.
The scale of the outbreak scared many investors in the country, who began sending back home their expatriate workers. Flights to Liberia and the other two affected countries, Guinea and Sierra Leone, were cancelled. Under pressure to halt the spread of the virus and save many lives as possible, the government of Liberia declared a state of public health emergency to safeguard the public and contain the outbreak. Non-essential civil servants were sent home on compulsory leave. Public gatherings were outlawed and beaches were closed. Nightclubs and entertainment centers were ordered to close not later than 6 p.m. As well, the government closed the land borders with neighbors Guinea, where the outbreak started, Sierra Leone, and Ivory Coast. Internally, the government also sealed off communities that were classified as worst affected and restricted the movement of people in and out of those areas. The measures, especially the closure of the borders, greatly impacted hundreds of cross-border traders in the country, many of whom were thrown out of business and their families threatened by hunger and harsh living conditions.
My name is Brigadier Cecile. During the Ebola crisis, borders all were closed, so there was no chance for us to cross and go and get goods. So because of that, we decided to buy goods in Liberia and sell. Not to go out because of the Ebola crisis, we all were afraid. So I always keep buying from the Chinese store and sell at the red light there because of the border condition and the Ebola crisis.
So before the Ebola crisis in Liberia, where were you going? Where were you traveling in the sub-region to buy your goods?
Sometimes I used to go Guinea, Ghana, and Togo. There I used to get my goods.
And tell us about that experience, traveling outside of your country to do business in the sub-region. What are some of the challenges that you experienced then?
For the experience in Ghana when we went there, sometimes other people get friends with you, and sometimes other people, they are just savage. Was the first place we went to go buy, even or sitting on bench on a Ghana woman bench, she was shopping that she didn't sit on her bench. Because sometimes when we go out there, the way they treat her, very bad.
And then how was the business going before the Ebola crisis in terms of profit making? Were you making just so much money before the Ebola crisis?
Before the Ebola crisis, we used to go out, so now we go out, we buy goods. Sometimes we can't make good profit, but since...
When you say good profit, tell me just how much profit you could make sometimes from buying goods and selling at a particular time.
Sometimes we buy things at $2,000 goods. Sometimes we got $600, $700.
And then during the Ebola crisis?
During the Ebola crisis, the profit, it was not much. But we can just sit on some gold and buy from the Chinese store, so not less than, if you buy 1,000, we get less than $150, $200.
$200?
Yes.
There was a point in time when you finally decided you were leaving the market during the Ebola crisis. What triggered that decision? by you?
Because Ebola was getting too rampant in the country in order to be infected. So I decided to stay home and take care of my children.
So during that course, how were you getting bread on the table for you and your kids, for you and your family?
I was getting it through my fiancé with our cars. Sometimes the cars run and bring money that we were using to provide for our children. And we were depending on for the Ebola crisis.
However, border restrictions and threats of the Ebola virus did not deter some traders who risked their lives at great cost, sneaking into the bushes and crossing the border to Guinea, buying goods and bringing them to Liberia. The temporary withdrawal of multinational companies and the closure of Liberia's borders did not only have a toll on households and families, it weakened the country's revenue intake as well as slowed its economic growth. Amara Kone is Liberia's Minister of Finance, Development and Economic Planning.
It affected domestic food production, it affected the concession activity, they all started leaving. It affected the service sector, the hotels, the restaurants, nobody wanted to go there. It affected manufacturing. The light manufacturing we have in Liberia had to shut down because people could not congregate in one area, for work purposes. And then our priority projects, our energy programs, three major programs, the Hydro, the HFO, and the CLSG, the West African Power Pool, all got stopped. And then the security sector, we could not train our, LNP officers because they had to touch each other. So we are now behind in terms of meeting our obligation under the unbilled drawdown. This severely affects education. Schools are still closed. We are grappling with that. And it's costing millions of dollars to reopen schools. Our health sector came under serious attack. All the investment we've made, with the improvements made in the health sector, that even led to the health sector to be on target to meet these, the Millennium Development Goals in certain areas, particularly in child, health. So it was unfair for us to attack the health sector folks who, they expose us a lot. And then social protection. We have more orphans, more widows, and more widowers today in Liberia than at any period since the end of conflict. So we have to also deal with that problem. The children who lost their parents to Ebola. So all of that led to a declining economy to 1%.
According to a World Bank Group analysis on the economic impact of Ebola in Africa, Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone will lose at least $1.6 billion in foregone economic growth this year as a result of the epidemic. David Evans is a senior economist at the World Bank. He explains the economic loss that Ebola plunged the three worst affected countries into.
When we look at prices, which are a big indicator for food security, we see in Liberia that rice prices this year, relative to rice prices average between 2012 and 2013, which is the red line, rice prices up 20%. 70% of people saying that the combination of those prices and the drop in income means they don't have sufficient to purchase the same amount of food that they were purchasing before. In Sierra Leone, interestingly, we see a slightly different pattern where rice prices are relatively stable, but there's a significant drop in trader activity, which means reduced income for farmers. You've got a lot of cash crop farmers producing cocoa and coffee in Sierra Leone, but without traders because of reduced opportunity for mobility, able to come and able or willing to sort of come and purchase the crop. And furthermore, these traders are an indicator of reduced informal economic activity more broadly. So when we take these leading indicators and we put them together, so our country economists together with the teams from the IMF updated the projections for 2014 economic growth. And what this translates into, what we're showing here is how much poorer these countries are in the context of Ebola than they would have been in the absence of Ebola. And so you can see for Guinea, we're looking at $130 million, Liberia 66, Sierra Leone 163. In each of the countries, this is between 2 and 4% of the national GDP. So 2 and 4% is a significant number in and of itself. Also, in all three countries, poverty rates at the baseline are between 50 and 65%. And so when you've got a lot of households that are hovering right at the cusp of poverty, 2 to 3% decrease in GDP from what it would have been in the absence of Ebola.
You are listening to Underneath the Deads, Ebola's Hidden Cost, with me, Adolphus Maulo, on West Africa Democracy Radio.
We are Project Ebola. We live in a world, my people, full of uncertainties, no security. Everything be possible. It could be your mama, your papa, brother, your sister. Let's stand together to fight this deadly disease now. What kind of world we live in? Full of uncertainty. Security, everything be possible. It could be your mother, your father, even your sister. Let's stand together to fight this deadly disease now. From Liberia to Nigeria, from Guinea to Sierra Leone, take precaution. Mama Africa, it could be your mama, your brother, sister, your father. Let's stand together. Mama Africa, God bless Africa. We must all arise. Let's stand together. Let's stand together. Fighting for your country. We must all arise. Let's stand together. Let's stand together. Fighting.
In neighboring Sierra Leone, some people took austerity measures to save their businesses from collapsing. This included sending some staff home on compulsory leave because customers were not coming. Ernest Ndomina is the chief executive officer of Corner Lodge Hotel in Freetown.
We are unable to pay our staff for the past 4 or 5 months. And so we laid off some staff, and we just started having some guys in and out on skeleton basis. And of course, we are unable to pay our loans on time, and the banks are now after us.
Like Liberia, Sierra Leone is trying to put together the broken pieces, resuscitating its economy, revamping the health sector, and dealing with many other challenges brought about by the virus. Kaifala Mara is Sierra Leone's Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
We have to import a lot more. In fact, we've been having conversation, with the IMF to ensure that, support is provided so that we'll be able to support the importation of big ticket items. For example, petroleum, rice, fuel and the others. These are commodities that are required. We need support in that regard. So, food security is under threat. It meant that we have to go in for as much social programs as possible. We need to recalibrate our agricultural sector to ensure that we embark on activities that will get our people to go back on the farms, to ensure that our smallholder farmers are again on track, to ensure that we open our feeder roads. Now before this time we are thinking of embarking on an industrial policy, one that will help us to develop the value chain within agriculture. That is out of the window now. So we have to go back to the basics, and that is how diet is, and that is how food security has been threatened. The businesses are living, and it meant that skeletal operations will continue to be, the case, and so it meant that revenues will dry up, growth will stagnate, and so the only thing we are looking forward to is that the promises that have been made will come in as quickly as possible, so that we'll go back to business and become once more attractive. This is a generational fight. It behooves all of us, those in country and those outside, to join the fight. And to the media I will say, it really is good to understand and read what Ebola is really about, instead of sensationalizing the situation and throwing scare or globalizing fear. It's really, really unfair on the continent. If we put our resources together as we have pledged on many of these forums, I strongly believe that we'll be able to put it behind us as soon as possible, because at the end of the day, humanity counts.
Back in Liberia, economic activities have started to kick in after the end of the Ebola outbreak. The multinational companies are back, the borders are reopened, and traders are once again on the move.
I go Conakry for goods, even last year I just returned back to Liberia this one Saturday.
Tell me about the experiences, the challenges on the way to Conakry. What are the restrictions? What are the new measures put in place that you encountered that are quite different from those you once experienced before the Ebola outbreak?
For now, the challenge that we're facing on the road is ugly from the border to Zimi. Southern side is very bad. The road condition is not good at all. But when we cross there, we get from the challenges now. Every gate we reach in Sierra Leone, we wash our hands because the Ebola crisis is still in Sierra Leone. Even in Guinea, that is the same thing. When we go there, we always protect ourselves by using long slings, carry our sanitizer, wash our hands. While we lay down, carry our own bracelet to take care of ourselves. Because of the Ebola crisis is still on us, so we have to be very careful with ourselves.
But don't you see this as an extreme risk that you are taking, traveling to countries where Ebola is still thriving?
It's a risk for us for what we're going to do. For now, if we not do the higher children, we go to school, how they will survive. So we need to pray that God should guide ourselves. When we go, we try to protect ourselves.
What sort of reception do you receive from your host countries or people in the host countries? Do people welcome you, for instance, in Guinea and Sierra Leone, going there to do business? How do they look down on you?
No, they get ready to all hash. Every year we reach what they request for, we give to them and find our way through.
And things are very smooth for you, business people engaged in cross-border trade?
Yes, it's business is fine with us.
And back in Liberia, how's the business going? Are people coming to buy?
The business in Liberia is okay. Don't hammer us. We come here, we sell the only thing they can put on, drop their ticket at all, but no one disturb us.
Sometime this year, the international community organized a conference where financial commitments were made to help Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone to tackle the disease, as well as address the social and economic challenges it triggered. David Evans of the World Bank said making good on those promises will make the affected countries recover faster.
It's plausible that even by the end of 2015, we might see some rebound, so the losses will be less. And hopefully this will be an interruption in very active economic growth rather than a permanent shift. But without swift containment, the impact for the region
You've been listening to
very,
Underneath
very large.
the Deaths,
So
Ebola's
we need to
hidden
focus
costs,
include our focus on the economic impact, but also recognize that
on social protection
investors in economic activity are most likely to
Today's
return
edition
once
of the program
the epidemic
focused
seems
on
to be
how
under
the
control. People have
restrictions of
confidence that the
cross-border
government
activities to
and
stop the
partners
spread of the Ebola virus
are making
affected
progress on that.
cross-border
But at the
traders
same
in the
time,
region.
there's a need to
I'm
provide
Adolphus
fiscal
Mawulu.
support.
I
Again, the
produced and
governments have
presented the
shifted
program
huge
with
amounts of
funding
resources
support
over to help
from
spending
Oxfam in
off
partnership
a
with
dwindling set of
WDR.
resources as it is. And so for the government to be able to continue to provide the services for the economy to function effectively, or as effectively as possible, it's crucial to continue providing fiscal support, implement institutions which will enable the flow of commercial exchange, so encouraging trade with whatever surveillance is necessary to make people feel comfortable and confident that they can trade without, while safeguarding their partners from contagion.
Among the three most affected countries, Liberia was the hardest hit. The country was declared free of Ebola last month by the World Health Organization after the virus destroyed over 4,000 lives and left physical, emotional, and psychological scars on the population. Many of those who survived from the virus have since lived with its devastating impact. The virus has left some male survivors impotent, others with blindness, while some female survivors have experienced regular disruption of their menstrual cycle. You've been listening to Underneath the Deaths, Ebola's Hidden Costs, our program that looks at the impact of Ebola on social protection and livelihoods. Today's edition of the program focused on how the restrictions of cross-border activities to stop the spread of the Ebola virus affected cross-border traders in the region. I'm Adolphus Mawulu. I produced and presented the program with funding support from Oxfam in partnership with WDR.